and welcome to the Holistic Living, Learning, and Loving podcast, where we are bringing you back to the basics.
We explore sustainable living and holistic health and strive for progress, not perfection.
So please join us on a wellness journey and feel empowered to make positive changes in your life.
Hey guys, thanks again for joining us. We have a really fun topic today that is very near and dear to our hearts, as always. So I think this is going to be a really great episode. I just want to again thank our subscribers, our listeners, our family, friends, people that support us. We really appreciate it. We hope that this is valuable information and that you feel like you learned something new when you listened to us. And so we are very happy to still be doing these and having fun doing them. So today we're going to talk about homeschooling. The past, Heather thought that homeschooling was so weird, and I had a friend that was doing it, and I thought it was, a very odd thing to do. And the new Heather is all about it, and I've been really strongly thinking of it for a couple years now, but my kids are still really young. So I am still in the learning phases of homeschooling. I'm certain that I'm going to do it, but I still have to figure out how I'm going to do it. Whereas Rachel, you are in the trenches and have been for how long?
This is going to be year 4. We're starting.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So Did you feel like you got it all at the beginning, or are you still learning?
No. So homeschooling is not something you're going to have all figured out in the first year. And I would even go honestly, I don't think you ever get it all figured out. It's definitely a process. You learn more and more each year. But as I was just telling you before we got on the camera, a lot of us, homeschooling wasn't as popular when we were. It's very popular now. A lot of people are doing it.
I don't
but when
think
we were
knew
younger,
anyone homeschooled when I was a kid.
I think I knew 2 people, and honestly, they weren't weird like we thought homeschoolers were. The people that I knew anyway, but. Yeah, it wasn't popular.
Homeschooling was definitely, at least, so Mike told me he knew, a couple kids that were homeschooled, and then they came to his school, I think in high school, and, they were almost, outcasts, they were never going to run with the popular kids, because it was, weird in some way. Not that they were necessarily weird, but I think just that, society kind of frowned upon that at that time.
Yeah, it's totally a different time. But, yeah, in the beginning, I just didn't know what to expect. We constantly want to go back to the way school is structured. We think we need to recreate school at home, and that's the complete opposite of what homeschooling is, or the meaning behind it. I guess some people do that, and that is what they're trying to do and want to do, but I think the vast majority are trying to get away from that. But it is a very hard thing to do without constantly staying conscious of it. Because it's just so ingrained in us, But a lot of people are so I guess a good way to start is, why would you want to homeschool at all, right? Why not just put them in school? What's the whole meaning and purpose behind it?
Why are people doing it? Why is this a thing all of a sudden?
Right. So basically, we want to allow our children to fully enjoy and experience their childhood while fostering a love of learning, exploring, and discoveries. We want to let them learn hands-on and apply knowledge to real-life lessons and skills. To let learning happen naturally and individually rather than a standardized one-size-fits-all kind of deal,
Yeah, so I feel like just going way back to what the first thing you said is to let a child be a child is number one in this whole thing. Is making them go to school and be on set schedules and stand in line and conform to everyone else in the way they look and act and all those different things. It's stripping childhood away from our children.
In every way.
The age of 5 years old.
Yeah, and when you put your kids in school, you instantly see a difference in them, and that's the most heartbreaking thing. And that was my number one reason for pulling them out of school. We actually Bentley was in school, and Petal was in pre-K. Bentley was in first grade, I think, or second, and they were at a different school. We moved. They had to go to school here, which was supposed to be a great, better school, but he was happy where he was. Petal was too, but she was only in pre-K, and so when we went to the new school, the kids just kind of shunned him. Like I didn't give it much of a chance. It was only 2 weeks he was there. But, like, they all knew each other already. And I guess the teacher kept trying to force people to be his friend and, like, talk to him. And, like, they were kind of ugly about it and, like, would run away and not want to talk to him and stuff like that. And just, I couldn't take it. Like, my heart couldn't take it. Not even for a little bit, you know. I couldn't even just say, let's wait it out and see, you know. I had recently quit my job, and so I was home. And I kind of already had it on my heart to, like, I always kind of wanted to try it, you know? So I was like, let's just do it. Let's just try it. And honestly, going into it, I never even thought I would stick with it. I was like, this is probably not going to work out. I didn't think I could actually teach my kids or that they would even listen to me or any of that. I knew nothing. And now I would never put them back in school, even if I had to get a job and go back to work. I mean, I guess never say never. You never know what could happen in your life. But anything I can foresee happening, I don't think I'd put them back in school. But yeah, like my main reason was I hated that, even from my own experience in school, I remember changing myself so much. I was so worried about what everybody thought of me.
Yep.
Like, I loved my childhood. I was like the most imaginative, creative kid. But when I went to school, I felt like I had to hide that. I had to be cool. I had to fit in. And I mean, you do, really. I mean, we can't just tell our kids, go to school and be yourself. No, because you get picked on, teased. So they all end up being the same kind of kid. And if you're not that kind of kid, you're not cool.
Yep.
It's like a fight or flight thing.
I switched schools when I was in 6th grade, and I never, like, from that point forward and for years, I struggled to feel like I belonged anywhere.
Yeah.
So, like, I get that feeling, and kids are cruel.
They're so cruel.
And I just find, you know, public school kids, I mean, I don't know, private school probably too, is that they know too much, you know?
Yes.
Like, you have those couple kids that have too much access to things that turn all the kids like that. You know, they speak, you know, sexual things or violence or any number of things that, like, are just truly, honestly, like, when you think about it, are inappropriate for kids. There's some people that they don't feel that way or whatever, but kids are kids, and, like, kids shouldn't be exposed to any, like, sexual things, violent things, you know, at such a young age. It's, like, really sad that we have grown accustomed to that in our country, that's acceptable.
Yeah, like, I think the kids at school, like, your kids will become so sexualized.
Yes.
I mean, in multiple ways. They're going to learn a lot of the sexual things. They're going to start to care about looking a certain way, you know, like being more sexy and all, like, boyfriends, girlfriends type of deal. Like, all this stuff that would have never happened had they not gone to school, because there's just, like you said, there's kids there that are just exposed to different things that you don't want your kids exposed to. And you can't control it. Once they're at school, that's it, you know?
Yeah, you can't control who they hang out with. You have no control over who their friends are inside those walls, or what they're doing or any of that stuff. So you are giving up this huge piece of control over your kid's life. And let's be honest, like, some people will say, you know, well, they need a proper education with someone who's certified and all that stuff. Like, I get that part of the argument, but I think a big part of it is that in our country, it's just daycare. We're sending our kids to school because we have to work, or we don't, you know, we need a break or whatever, instead of, you know, continuing to stay home with them. You know, it's our, like, I know a lot of parents that I want to be like, oh, well, have you thought of homeschooling? But, like, I already know that they can't deal with their kids for longer than they already have to.
Yeah, I know. A lot of parents are like, oh, no, I need that break. And you know what? If that's you, that's fine.
Yeah, and
I
I
think,
get it. Like, some people's kids are, like, you know, they need more of a break than others. I'll say that.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, like, everybody's needs are different, and we obviously still need the public school system for some people, but I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are capable of homeschooling and probably would want to if they understood how possible it is in, just like that, it doesn't have to be you sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day at home with the chalkboard teaching your kids. Like, that is not homeschool, you know what I mean? And honestly, a lot of people are like, I don't have time. But we'll get into that later, because I have a whole list of objections to homeschooling that I'll address. But other good qualities that were like for reasons why we would want to homeschool, and big ones for me, we want our kids to grow up to be free thinkers and leaders who are confident in who they are and their abilities and know how to move and navigate through this world, right? Like, my big thing is I want free thinkers and leaders. I don't want like
Sheep.
yeah, like factory workers. Not saying that they're just like, like, I feel like school is just pumping out workers to work for the man for the rest of their life. You do this way, you think this way, and that's just what it is. Don't ask questions, just do. And that's not. I think a lot of homeschoolers, we're wanting free thinkers, and we want leaders. We want them to be creative, come up with ideas, business owners, entrepreneurs, and all of that.
Yeah, because like whenever you institutionalize schooling from the year 5 years old and for every year after that, like you are, like we said, making them dress alike, think alike, look alike, everything. Like we're uniforming them to all fit this one mold. And our kids are different beings. They have different personalities than even their parents, completely different. And, doing that is like basically shutting down their like creativity. Like we're just chopping it right off and saying, no, you're not going to be creative. You're going to sit here and work on your ABCs for the next, half hour while the teacher goes and wrangles the class,
Right. That's exactly what it is. I mean, imagine what the world would be if every single person had the time during their entire childhood to just discover who they are, to accept who they are, and pursue their passions and just play around with it. Like my son right now, this has been a thing where he makes he's been making news articles for just like our mundane home activities. And then he made like a little
newsreel.
A newsreel about my daughter being the person robbing a bank, and he had a little picture up of her, and like he edited the video. It was like really funny, and now he's got like a little list of people he sends his newsletter out to. Is like my mom, my dad, and Heather, and my sister, and it's really cool. But it's like, so I limit their amount of time on electronics, unless it's like education. I'm just talking about like video games or like fun time. So that's like really just 2 hours of the day in the evening that they can have it. So he's like, it forces, and then our lessons only take like maybe an hour per kid. Mm-hmm. And so they have a lot of free time to just discover what they whatever,
like.
Yeah,
what their passions are.
Right. They're bored. They get bored. So they have to come up with stuff, and they end up doing whatever, they're passionate about
them in the moment.
Yeah, and it's really cool to watch your kids do this stuff and to teach themselves things. And it's like when they're in school 8 hours a day, then they get home, they have to do homework for like another hour or two. I hated crazy. That. Yeah, it's like really insane. And that's another thing, is like if you could do homework for 2 hours with your kid after they come home from school, you could do homeschool.
Yeah.
But
I feel like another thing is like learning real life lessons. Like, so when we go to school and we learn who's on freaking currency and like random stuff like that, stuff that you will never need in your life, we take them away from us and take them away from learning how to navigate real life situations. I mean, like my kids are with me, they hear me on the phone, how I talk to people, being kind to people, like how I'm getting things done, like, oh, well, I need to call this because we have this problem or whatever. Like they're starting to understand, like, how you handle these things, how to cook, like that's necessary life skills. And then in the future, I mean, how to do taxes. Like there's so many life skills that you cannot possibly expect like a standardized school to be able to teach your kids, because they have these factory settings that they have to go by.
Well, it's just academics.
Yeah.
Really.
And they have to teach the whole class. They don't have time to devote to your one kid,
Yeah. Like the school system is just focused around math, English, social studies, or history and science. Like, they don't really focus on anything else. And like you said, like, they wouldn't have the time. It takes them 8 hours just to do that.
I know. It's a
There's
lot.
just too many kids involved,
Personalities, like issues. I mean, if like just thinking about having to deal with one kid, your own kid, the kid that you know best,
Right.
imagine a teacher that has to figure that out for all these other kids and try to split their time and give where they can. But, there's always kids that fall through the cracks with that and that aren't getting the attention that they deserve or the education that they deserve.
Yeah, and that's what takes a degree. Like, that's why teachers need to go to college, is to learn how to teach 30 kids and deal with kids from different backgrounds and life situations and all of this stuff. That's what takes, all of this extra education. As far as teaching your kids the things they need to know in life, you don't need to go to college for that. We already know everything we need. We already have everything we need to teach our children. Like, I think a lot of, like, so many people are worried about that. Like, oh, I'm not qualified to teach them. Like, first of all, a lot of the crap we learn in school is so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like, how much of that do you actually remember?
None of it, almost.
Right. Like, the quote, I have it somewhere in our notes, by Albert Einstein, that education is what remains after you've forgotten everything you learned in school. And it's true. It's like, that's what you actually learned. Is the stuff the stuff you actually remembered, which most of it is forgotten. So another one of the last qualities for why we'd want to homeschool that I put down was we want work, play, and education to be blended into one rather than being segregated as separate actions that cannot happen interdependently. It's kind of like how healthcare has become. We view all the body systems separately and all the organs separately. Like, everything is separate instead of viewing the body as a whole and functioning as a whole. I mean, that's kind of how life has just become all together, right? Like, the education system, everything. Like, we instead of like just viewing it as like, let's just live life and learn together. Like you said, like them watching you navigate through life and learning as you go. When they're home with you, you just take every task you're doing and everything throughout the day, you just
It's a lesson.
It's just a simple lesson,
Yeah.
And it's not like you're going to sit there and preach forever.
You're doing it. Like,
exactly.
To remember to be open with your kids and say, well, the reason why I'm doing this is because of this. Like, so that they're actually learning why and not just like I'm reading this book by you suggested it, The Wild and the Free by Ainsley Arment. And she's talking about how the kid, like, she's cooking or whatever, and she chops part of the ham off at the end, and her kid's like, why are you doing that? And she's like, I don't know, my mom always did it. So she said, Mom, why do you do that? She's like, I don't know, my mom always did it. So she goes to her grandmother, and she's like, why? She's like, oh, because it didn't fit in my pot that I had. And it's like, oh. So they're just doing the same thing out of repetitiveness, and they don't even know why. You know, so it's important to give your kids the why you were doing the thing you were doing.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, kids learn so well through these just simple mundane tasks that through the house. Like, so much of that actually sticks rather than those things that the teacher's preaching in front of the classroom. Like, these things, they're actually taking it in and they remember it.
Well, it's
because
also,
it makes sense.
If you think about it, so like I get a kick out of when the girls say something or have the same mannerism that like one of us does. Like, they'll say, like, the other day we were looking at this little frog down the street and we were done, and Arabella said, or Addison said, all right, now you're good to go. Because like I always say that to them, like, all right, we're good to go, or you're good to go. And it's just so funny. Like, they are complete mirrors of us.
Yes.
And we have this great opportunity to give them this education, and there's absolutely no one out there in this world who is better to give them something than their parents, because that's what they do. They are created to mirror us, They're our spit and image. Like, they are meant to learn everything from us,
You're right. Like, no one is going to care and love your child like you do.
No one.
Nobody is a better example who's going to carry your morals and values like you do. Nobody's going to care about your child's future and success like you do. Yeah. You love your child. You're going to teach them and make sure they know everything that you feel is necessary for them to make it through life.
Yep. And then in that vein of how much no one else is going to love the kid as much as you do, is we also, no one else wants to spend time with our kids the way we do.
Yeah.
And life is just so absolutely sadly short. And especially the life that we get to have with our kids as being young kids. Like every parent I've ever talked to says it goes in a flash of an eye,
Yes.
and then the childhood's completely over, and then your kids are doing their own thing. They're going to college or whatever, living their own lives, moving away, whatever. This is our time that we have with our children. It's the only time we'll ever get.
That's another main reason why I initially took my kids out of school, because I like being around my kids. Yes, they drive me crazy just like everyone else's kids drive them crazy.
1000%.
Yeah. But like, I know that this is going to go by so fast. And like, just me looking back at when they were like 3 and 4 years old, when the memories pop up on Facebook, I'm like, oh God, like, I wish I could have just soaked that up more. And even back then, I knew it was going to go by fast, and I was soaking it up as much as I could. Like, I was aware, but it still just went by so fast, And like, if our kids are in school, they're gone with strangers
For
most
like 8
of their
hours a day.
Yeah, 5 days a week.
And then if you're doing extracurricular activities, you have practices, dance, whatever after school, then that's more time. And then they have homework, and that's more time that you aren't just getting to, dinner. And then it's like, I think they said the average family spends 36 minutes together a day.
Yeah.
Isn't that depressing?
It
36 minutes?
That's like been the whole thing with me these past few years. Like I guess like the meat and potatoes of everything I'm doing is to get my family back together for the majority of the day. Like my main goal, I've already got me and the kids home, and is to get Nick home too. Like, and have a family business that can sustain us enough, right? Like, I've been trying to learn to live with less and, be okay with less, all of this, so that we can live off of less money, just so that eventually we could have him home. And that's kind of like a lot of parents might want to try to do that too. That might have, maybe the mom had to work, but you want to homeschool. Like, there's ways we can make it happen, by just trying to live with less. But yeah, like, I wanted to be home with my kids. I wanted to experience this. And oh my God, y'all, like, homeschooling is so fulfilling. Not only are you home with your kids, but you're watching them learn and grow. Like, just watching your kids actually learn and being there when their face lights up because they figured it out and they've learned something new, and to have their mom or dad there to be like, good job, I'm so proud of you. Like, it's just like, I could cry. Like, that is like the best. Like, it creates memories that are better than anything in this world.
Yeah. No, I like truly believe that. And like, some people would say that like I'm being selfish and holding my kids back because I just don't want to like part with them. But I just feel in my heart that this is the right path. And I don't want to give them to strangers to raise my kids. I want to raise them the way I want to raise them,
Right, yeah.
And I want to be with them. Yeah,
and you should always follow your gut and your intuition. We've been so trained to not trust that, to just listen to what the experts say. The experts say they need to go to school, they need to do this. No, our intuition and our gut is right, and we should always trust that, right?
And like, in part of that, our intuition and all that stuff, it gets worked out of us by going to school. Because again, we're institutionalizing our kid. We're telling them, you listen to them, you don't speak unless you're spoken to, all those things, like we're ingraining in them from 5 years old that they've got to be just like everyone else. And that is not who I want, like you said, free thinkers.
Yes. Kids who can be individuals, like not just trying to conform.
Yep.
But
and then it's like there's lots of things that go into homeschooling, right? It's not like you said, sitting down with a book like at the table. Like, play is part of it. Like, it's not just the book, it's play. It's going to do things like going to museums, going to see bugs on like a nature trail. Like, there's so many things that are lessons. Everything's a lesson.
Yeah, like sometimes, like we do all kinds of co-ops and groups, like we have Forest School and we have Lego Club. We also have, what else do we have? We have art class that we go to, but it's like a homeschool art class. But then it's like they learn so much from all of that, but a lot of learning happens just whenever you weren't planning for it. Like, honestly, like, it's just a random, like, oh, come help me cook. And I'm teaching them how to cook and how to, how to cut with a knife, how to
measure ingredients.
Yes, measure ingredients. Like, Petal had these easy bake oven recipes that we got off of Etsy, and they didn't work in the actual easy bake oven. So I've been teaching her. She has to read the instructions on them. So that's reading. And she has to do the measurements on her own, so she's learning that. And then I actually have her turning the oven on, setting, preheating it. She's putting her pan in and out, so she's learning how to cook, she's learning how to read, she's learning how to measure. That's math, English, science, all in one, right? And that's all life skills, something she's actually going to use.
Yes.
And then, okay, so we didn't do lessons all summer long, and from the past that kind of hurt us. I found that like especially with Petal, because I've basically been homeschooling Petal since kindergarten. She only went to pre-K, so I'm the one who taught her to read. I found that when we didn't do lessons for a while, she'd kind of go back, like she'd forget some things. So I was kind of worried about that. But when we started back up this week, she's reading better than she was before we stopped. And I know it's because she's been playing video games. She's been playing on the Oculus all summer long. And she knows if she doesn't read, she just can't play, because I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to read it for her. Nobody's going to read it for her. So she had to do it. And that forced her to read bigger words. And she figured it out, and she's reading amazingly, so she's applying it to real life.
So that like kind of brings me to one thing that I've learned when listening to this book is that, we're so obsessed, especially from a young age, at our kids like checking the boxes. They can read, they know their ABCs, they can count up to 20, whatever, all these things that are ingrained in us is like, to be a successful person, you have to do this. And if you don't learn this at that young age, then you probably won't be as smart or whatever. And that's just all like a bunch of BS.
Yes.
Like, kids do not have to know that stuff. And like, that does not set them up for their long-term success in life or in learning. Like, it's just these things that, because we are a culture of hustle, 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 be the best, that we are putting that on our kids and taking away their childhood to make them standardized, and it's just not necessary. Like they say, the more slowly trees grow at first, the sounder they are at the core. So basically, when a tree is growing, and anything, even a vegetable plant in your garden, think of it, if the plant, it has time to grow and be stabilized and have roots in the ground, and it's not just spending all its time trying to make a flower, it's building the components to be a strong plant, then it will be way more hardy in the long term. So that's the same thing as with your kids, is like, you are establishing this person that's looking at it and understanding on a different level. We're not just saying recite this component until it's burned in your memory. It's different. You're stabilizing their core.
Teaching to understand rather than to just memorize. Teaching them how to actually apply knowledge, understand knowledge. And like, it's just always, like you said, like in our society, it's about like who can do something better. It's like, oh, look, my 3-year-old could read. I remember when Bentley was born, they had My Baby Could Read or whatever. And I was like, oh, I need to do that. Like how cool it would be for my kid to read at 3 or as a baby, whatever. But then I had this man that ended up being in my life through certain events. And he had a bunch of kids, and he homeschooled them. And he said that they never even started any kind of formal learning until they were 7 years old. Before then, it was just exploring, discovery, all of that stuff. And it's true. It's like we're forcing our kids to start learning concepts that their brains just aren't ready for. Therefore, it takes them 12 years to learn stuff that if we just imagine, like, all the stuff our kids are learning, if we just started learning that as in our late teens, we would have had that down in probably just a year or two or less. Because our brains are just more equipped to understand.
Yeah, because if your kids aren't developmentally ready for it yet, It's just going to take longer. Like,
Yeah.
I always struggle because, I have twins. And in some cases, Addison will be more developmentally progressed than Arabella. But I can't just force Arabella to do it. Like with swimming, Addison was swimming very fast, and Arabella just was not ready yet. And like, what am I going to do? Force my kid doing something that's going to terrify her because she's just not. I know she could do it. It's just she wasn't mentally ready to let go and do it.
And when we force them to do something they're not ready for, then it becomes
Trauma.
a chore.
And
or it's something that they dread.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then once they dread it, it's like, oh, the fun of it is out the window, And that is the goal of homeschooling, is to keep learning fun and exciting, to go at
Make
your own
school
pace.
fun again.
Yes, and it is when you're not forced to do things that you're not ready for, to consume information as like let the child lead, right? Like that's what a lot of people do, like unit studies. Like I always like to use the ancient Egypt example because it's easy, but like sometimes your kids will be really into ancient Egypt, right? So you can spend the whole year, however long that they're really into it, and you use that to teach them everything. You can do English through the theme of ancient Egypt, writing about ancient Egypt or whatever, do art, drawing ancient Egypt, history, learning about it, obviously, and science, you can do little science experiments that are relevant, and math, whatever, and you keep it, let them lead the way. Right?
Like,
and
figure
they're
out what
gonna
their
love
passions are, and then make your curriculum what they enjoy at in that season.
Yeah, and it doesn't take them long to learn math, English, all your main academic stuff. We need to remember that you don't have to focus so solely on that. We of course we need those things and we use those things in life, but that isn't even the half of it. We use so much more than that, right? Like your day doesn't need to consist of that. Sometimes you could just skip it altogether and just focus on other things. Like my son's been learning so many computer skills and coding and design. Like let them actually focus on their passions. And you never know, you might have a kid that has a startup business at 16 or 11. Like let them actually show you what they're capable of. Let them pursue other interests. Not everything is always math, English, science, and history, Yeah.
And that brings me to this quote that you put. This is by From Call of the Wild and Free by Ainsley Arment. And she says, instruction is requiring our children to memorize facts and information. It comes from the outside in. Learning, on the other hand, is applying knowledge in their life in meaningful and life-changing ways. It happens from the inside out. And that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And yes, so that book is like so cool. I got it on audiobooks. It was like $4.99 on Apple. I didn't even check to see if my library had it. I probably should have. I bet it has it. But it's like I've just been listening to it. It's actually the first time I've ever listened to an audiobook. And I really like it.
Yeah, like audiobooks are so easy because you don't have to sit there and actually read the book. Like
I think maybe it's probably good for like self-help kind of books like this where it's like I can't I will devour a book that I'm like really interested in, like fiction, not like this stuff. I just can't read. And then it's weird because like I can read so many pages, like literally half a book. And then I just can't even bring myself to read 5 pages of this other stuff. But listening to it's so much easier.
Yeah. And the book's really cheap. So I highly suggest getting that book if you've ever even thought about homeschooling once. Just listen to the book because it's cheap and you can just listen to it while you're doing things. Like, just give it a try.
Yeah, like while you're cooking or whatever, unless you're teaching your kids.
Yeah.
That's the other problem with teaching them all those stuff is like when is enough? Like because I can get so consumed that I need to be showing them this, or like I can't ever have me time, so it's like sometimes you have to also take care of you too.
Exactly. And that's another beautiful thing about homeschool. Like if your kids are just like, say you're having like a few days you've been trying to teach them, but they're just not having it, like they're not in the mental space of it, they're kind of going through a funk, because we know our kids, they go through phases where they're just like, they're in a funk or you're just in like a funk. Yeah. Take the week off. You can do that. Trust me, you have time till your kids are 18 years old to teach them everything they need to know. They're going to know everything they need to know way before that. You have time, take breaks, be a good example of taking care of yourself and your physical self, your mental self, lead by example.
Yeah. Or like switch it up and like go to the museum or whatever and just
Yeah.
like let the museum teach them for the day,
Exactly. Like just do what feels good, what feels right. It doesn't always have to be what we have been taught it has to be,
Yeah.
So another good quote from Sandra K. Cook, the author of Overcome Your Fear of Homeschooling with Insider Information. She says, notice the difference. A child's disability is the focus in the traditional classroom setting, but his abilities are the focus in the homeschool environment. I feel like that's just such a powerful statement because it's true. In school, they focus on what our weaknesses are, right? Like if we're not good at something, they're like, oh, well, we need to work on that. We need to like build you up in that. Like you have to, because you need to meet where everybody else is at.
Yeah.
But not everybody.
Otherwise you're holding everybody back. And that's like they're always chasing the ones that are holding up the group.
Yes. But not everybody has to be great at math.
Yeah.
Not everybody needs to be able to write a great paper. You have your people who that's their thing. That's what they're going to be good at. We can't all be, if you're trying to be good at everything, you will never master anything.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and that's something I told Nick a while back because I kept trying to do so many things. I was trying to garden. I wanted to work on my house and learn how to lay my flooring down. I wanted to do herbalism. I wanted to I don't know, all kinds of like random stuff. Oh, leather work, all kinds of stuff. I was like, and I did them all decent, but I was mastering none of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what if we just let people be who they are and master what they're good at? As long as you know the basics of something, can you add, subtract, multiply, divide? I mean, that's mostly what we use, right? I mean, unless you're going to go do something else, but you're probably not going to go do something that requires extreme math skills if you hate it and you're not good at it.
And the kids that are excelling in that, the parents will identify that, and if you cannot support that, you can get them in clubs and other co-ops and stuff that can help with that,
Exactly.
Because that's like my husband's biggest thing is he thinks that we're going to reach a cutting off point in high school where we are no longer capable of teaching our kids anymore. And I don't believe that because him and I are like probably pretty perfect partners, whereas like I'm like, we're just so perfect. Whereas I'm like good at English and like really heavy, like good at chemistry, good at biology, like that's like my core. Whereas he's like really heavy focused in like physics and math and that kind of stuff. And I like I could give two shits about that stuff.
Right.
And also my brain just can't even comprehend it. So it's like we kind of have a good situation. And I think maybe what he doesn't realize yet is that there's just so many resources that it's not just the parent that has to carry the burden of every single thing either.
And a lot of times you're learning with your kid. Like I said, we forget so much that we've learned in school. So many times already, my kids are only 11 and 8, and they come across something I'm having to teach them that I forgot how to do. But it just takes me a second to read and figure it out. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I remember this. I mean, as long as you went to high school, up to high school, then and you were able to pass, you're going to remember, you're going to be able to teach them everything because you're going to remember it once you look at it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. And then like, and like another thing is also learning with them, even if you don't know it. So for instance, my girls, I had a nanny until they were, I don't know, like 2.5 or something. And they always spoke Spanish. No, they didn't know. And she spoke Spanish with them. So the girls understand Spanish. Like she only talked to them in Spanish. They get it, but they will not speak it because they're not exposed to it enough, And I've been searching like for a tutor or like a Spanish like co-op here locally or something, which I'm shocked that I can't find anything, but I can't. But I found this curriculum where it's like learn together. Like, because basically what we need to teach them is the basics, the beginning of a language, all the beginner stuff. So, like, why shouldn't I just do it with them?
Yeah.
It actually makes a lot of sense. It's daunting.
But I mean, you'll be there with them, especially if they're little. You'll be there with them anyway. So, I mean, you're already going to be learning it with them regardless, right?
True.
I mean, unless you got someone else to teach them. But, like, yeah, I mean, I think that's great. And then you're leading by example. They're watching you learn and see how you learn, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, you're teaching them so many things that you don't even know you're teaching them by doing that, you know?
And then it's like, and then a step further, like with Spanish, for instance, like if you have the means, of course, like you can also like take a trip like over the summer or whenever, like it doesn't have to be the summer because your kids aren't in school. You could do whatever
Right.
the hell you want to do it.
Yeah.
And you could go for the weekend or whatever to Mexico, like go to Cancun or wherever, you know, any
Freedom.
Spanish speaking country and go practice in the wild, you know?
Yes.
Like how cool is that? And that's
I know
your
that-
lesson. Like you don't even have to have lessons that week because guess what? Your lessons are your trip. You're
Yes.
learning culture. You're going to the markets and seeing the different kind of foods they eat and being exposed to these new things. And that's just like building your brain, you know? It's
Yes.
amazing.
In so many ways, like so many kids don't have the opportunity to learn any of these skills. Like they say homeschoolers are usually better workers. They're more well-rounded. They can speak to adults better because they spend a lot of time speaking to adults as children. Kids at school are constantly only talking to their teacher or other kids. And only kids their age, right?
Yeah, they're
'Cause
not
we
even
keep them-
exposed to kids in different age groups.
Right. Like they're always just with the kids their age. Like, and why do we think that that's beneficial? You know, kids learn from older kids, and they also learn how to be leaders by playing with the younger kids, right?
Yeah.
Leaders by teaching them and leading them, and then they learn from the older ones. That there's so much learning going on by being with different age groups.
And that's typically
But-
something that you're going to get in your homeschool co-ops and groups because there's
Yeah.
other homeschoolers with different range of kids. And so your kids are going to have more exposure to varying ages, you know?
Yeah, definitely,
and that's
for
important
sure.
too.
Like homeschool is definitely, you're always going to be around different ages, and that's what I love, you know. And it's not always going to be boys and girls, it's just everybody's included, you know. Like we do a PE group every Friday, and we have the older kids, the teenagers, playing down with the 4-year-olds, you know, like playing kickball. And sometimes we try to split it up just so they can play, you know, a little rougher or whatever. But it's just like, it's really cool, you know. And these kids at school, they don't get to learn these things because they're always at school. You know, you're really going to have a much more well-rounded child who knows, like I said, knows how to navigate through this world,
Yeah.
which is so important. We always identify intelligence as how well you know academics, right? Like how well you know math, English, science, and history. That's not what really truly defines intelligence, right? Like I know so many intelligent people who probably didn't even graduate high school. Like that, there's so much more to life that makes you intelligent and able to be successful than simply knowing that.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Like I feel like school, the thing about school is that it really takes up a very, I feel like, small space in our brain or how we got to where we are. But it takes up the biggest amount of time.
Yeah.
It consumes all this time and gives you so very little.
That's a
in my
great point.
opinion.
That's very true.
Because, like, I mean, that 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for however many months a year, I mean, it seems like it's like, it feels like it's shorter and shorter the breaks that kids have.
I know. It does.
Like, it feels like summer's always shorter and there's always just more stuff to cram in there, you know?
Yeah. I know, like kindergarten isn't like kindergarten used to be anymore. Like they keep teaching them, like advancing it more and more, like teaching them more concepts at younger ages, and it just
Well, because
so
it's just
sad.
this like perpetual, like United States, just hustle, 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 get better, like make more money,
Yeah.
work longer. You know, it's this like epidemic that we're in, and we just are making our kids like that. And then the fact that like after 8 freaking hours of school that you have to still do freaking homework
Oh my
is like,
God.
it blows my mind.
That used to really piss me off. Like Bentley would come home and he's in first or second grade. He's been at school all day, and then we were like sitting down at, you know, we already have to eat dinner. This is when I'm working too. And now we're doing homework for like 2 hours. He's just a little kid, you know?
It's like insane.
And it was stressful, and like we're studying for tests. That's a whole other thing. I don't believe in tests. With homeschool, you don't have to do tests. I mean, of course you can. Like I have a homeschooling mom. Her kids love tests. So, you know, they like love to be like, oh yes, like I got it right. You know, like test me. I want to see how well I do. And
Yeah, some
if they
kids are
love
like
that,
that.
then yeah, then that's great. But like a lot of kids don't. My kids hate tests. Like they get if you say the word test, they're like, oh my god, I don't know. Like they automatically start to like, you know, tense up. And I had test anxiety. Like I considered myself an intelligent person. Like I did well in school, but when it came to the test, like I was always one of the last one to finish because I had trouble focusing. I was always more of a self-learner than learning at school, and like reading directions, I'd have to read them like 6 times before it really sunk in what I needed to do, and then just watching everybody turn it in, and I'm like the last one would freak me out, and
Yeah.
I'd make stupid mistakes, you know.
Yeah, but that's
But-
like the thing about teaching your kid is you will know if they know. Like
Right.
you know what your kids know and what they don't know. You don't
Right.
need to test them because you know. You can ask them in a roundabout way to establish your test.
Exactly. So it's like we don't have to cause all this stress and studying and all. It's just
Yeah,
so
because we're not
unnecessary.
memorizing. We're
Right.
learning by doing. We're showing the way.
Which is
We're-
real learning.
Yeah, like so I'm really big into knowing different types of plants and flowers and stuff like that. And so and that comes from Carrie, my ex stepmom. She like knew all that stuff, and that's just something that I'll always have that connection with her, in spirit. So every time I see a plant, I'll be like, oh look, that's a latana. And then like the next time we'll see it, I'll be like, what is that? Like what kind of flower is that? Because I'm always just trying to see, like, do they know like what it is? Because I don't
Yeah.
want to always just tell them and not let them think for themselves either. But my girls are still young and they're still like, I don't know, I can't remember. So I'm
Yeah.
always, but like every time I see one, I always like tell them what it is because that's just like my special talent.
Yeah, and you know, like that's fun stuff because like they're gonna remember that. That's gonna be like just a special little thing that they know.
Just
and they're
like it
gonna-
is with me and Carrie, even though
Yeah.
like no matter that we don't really talk that much anymore, like I'll always have like that bond with her. And whenever I see a plant and I know the name, I will always associate that with her, you know?
Yeah, and that's just what's so great about it because you get to do these cool things and make these special bonds and memories, and like that's what I love. But I like how you said like, basically you don't tell them, you want them to remember it. They're still little, but yeah, like so like as your kids get older, Nick had to get on me about that, and even my kids get on me because I wouldn't give them time to just figure it out. I would end up telling them, right? Like, and Nick would always be like, you need to just let them, not even related to like academic stuff, just in life, you know, like let them just do it. Stop trying to tell them how to do it. Like,
Yes.
just let them go figure it out. They're going to do it wrong a million times. They might get frustrated, but just let them figure it out on their own. So much learning has happened in my kids by doing that, you know? Like,
Yep.
like I said, like if Petal can't play that game unless she reads, she could be like, oh, this is so hard, Mom. Can you just come read it? Can you please help me? And I could just go do it, right? Like, because that's what I used to always do. But no, now I'm just gonna like stand back and be like, no, you just can't play it if you don't read it. And she's gonna read it because she wants to play.
Yeah, and like,
you know.
Also with anything is like I'm type A and like I think my way is the way, and
Yeah.
that's not necessarily true, and they might have different ideas of how to solve a problem, and if I'm just telling them how to do it, they're not free thinking and they're not being creative and solving it on their own using their own brain, and they probably they might have something better than my way.
Yes,
you know?
and that happens. Bentley does that to me all the time because I'm the same way. Like I always think I've got it off, like I've got the best way, like learn this way, and that's happened many times where I'm like, no, do it this way. And then once I finally grasp what he's trying to do, or Pedal 2 has done this, I'm like, oh, that is a good way. You've had that figured out. Like I should have just let you do your thing. Yeah, so that's another thing that's like we really have to like just let them do it.
Let them be kids. Let them be responsible for their own thoughts. Let them come up with their own solutions. And
And
you
then
might be
once-
surprised.
Yeah, and then once they realize that they can do this, they don't have to ask their mom and dad how to figure something out for them, because they actually do have the skills and the ability to figure something out on their own. And once that clicks in their head, that's it. They know that they can do this, and they're like they're off trying to figure out everything, and that's lovely, you know?
Guys, we really enjoyed this discussion. It did go way over, so we're splitting this episode into 2 parts. Next week, we are going to talk about the pros and cons of homeschooling and some things that might be holding you back, and kind of get into more of the nitty-gritty. So please join us again for part 2 of the homeschooling episode. Thanks, guys. Hope to see you again next week. Bye.